Hey everybody, Aaron from the Ballpit here, back with another episode of The Writer's Block, which is a show where I pretty much discuss any creative topic that starts to titillate my interests at any given moment. And I wanted to talk about a tweet that I saw the other day, and I saw it a couple times because you know how Twitter works. When there's a tweet that gets a lot of likes or something, usually stealing an old tweet that got likes years ago, then everybody starts tweeting it because they all want their crumbs of attention. But I saw this old tweet the other day, which is about streaming services and shows, and it's obviously I can narrate what you're seeing on the screen right now, which is Disney Plus and Prime Video with crying faces being like, no, we can't release season all at once because we want people to keep talking about our show for a longer time. And then it shows Netflix as kind of like the Chad in this scenario, being like, here's a whole season, bro. You can do whatever the fuck you want with it. The problem that I have with this tweet is that Netflix should not be portrayed as the objectively correct opinion in this scenario. It's not. Disney Plus and Prime Video's method of distributing their shows is, in my opinion, the better method. And I'm going to explain why. Essentially, with the binge model of show distribution, which is what Netflix does, we release an entire season all at once, which allows for binge watching. What it does is it removes a lot of the impact that a show can have on the culture. It removes a lot of cultural relevancy that a show can have compared to the episodic format where it goes episode by episode. Before streaming services were super popular, people used to have to either basically move all their plans and carve out time in their schedule to make sure they got to a new episode of a show, or you would have to record it on your DVR and go back and watch it. But what this did for massive shows like Game of Thrones before they fucked up the ending, right? So many people would make sure, I forgot what night Game of Thrones was on. They would be like, okay, this night, I'm not going out. I'm not doing any of this. I'm staying in, maybe have some friends over, order some food, make some food, whatever you do, and we're going to watch Game of Thrones. So you'd do that, they'd carve out their night, they'd watch Game of Thrones, and then the next day, people would talk about it. Because you knew that anybody who was watching the show watched it last night. So you guys all had something to talk about because you all watched it for the most part. Unless you really couldn't make it because something else came up. But for the most part, you watched it. What that did is it maintained the impact of Game of Thrones on the culture. Because it was a talked about show and everybody was at the same point. When you release a show in the binge format, it removes that. Because somebody like me, even if a show comes out that I'm interested in and the whole season drops, I'm probably only watching 1 or 2 episodes in a day. I'm not a binge watcher. That's not me. I don't binge. So that means that say a show that I'm really excited about comes out on a Tuesday. On Wednesday, I could be at a completely different point than other people who have started watching the show or want to watch the show. Some people might not have started already. Some people might be halfway through. Some people might have already finished the show. At that point, then we're not able to have a conversation about the show because we're all at different points and we don't want it to be spoiled. So what you've done by making the binge network is you've made it so that TV shows, they're not as culturally relevant. The landscape of the silver screen is no longer as important to the culture as it once was. And all that does is it takes the artistic weight away from TV shows. In my opinion, this format, and I've said it before, this binge format, all it's going to do is it's going to make it so we don't have any more legendary TV shows. I'm talking the Breaking Bads, the Sopranos, the early season Game of Thrones, those type of shows. We're not going to have them anymore. The last one we really have that's considered kind of a widespread thing in the cultural landscape is Stranger Things. And again, that still is not as impactful as a lot of these older shows because of the binge format, because it all gets released at one time and people are on different tracks. I ultimately think that method is hurtful to the art form of television, and that returning to a weekly episodic format like Disney Plus and Amazon Prime Video would be better for the creative elements, the artistic integrity, and the cultural importance of TV as a whole. Will that end up happening? I don't know. Because at the same time, it's also better for business. Kind of. So, if there's a show I'm super excited about and I want to watch on Disney Plus, which you shouldn't be anyways because we're boycotting, but let's say Max, on Max Video, and it comes out in a weekly, let's say Prime Video, it comes out in a weekly thing, one episode a week, right? It means that I'm going to be subscribed to that service for the entirety of that runtime because I want to catch them all, right? Whereas with Netflix, if they're coming out with a show I'm super interested in, I can subscribe for the lowest possible period of time, watch it all, and then unsubscribe. Meaning that the weekly episodic format has incentives for keeping you subscribed for longer. However, Netflix does what everybody just loves so much, which is they completely flood their feed with shows, but cancel fucking 90% of them. They basically throw a bunch of shows out there, see if one of them gets super popular, like a Wednesday, for example. It hits a level of popularity and views that they want. Everything else gets canceled except for the shows that are above whatever view threshold they've deemed the one. And when you do it that way, it also limits the cultural importance of TV because you're flooding the market so much that people are going to start just making shows with as little effort and time into them as possible, just to try to basically bum rush people's brains as much content as possible to see what sticks, instead of putting the time and effort to create an artistically important piece of media for the silver screen. And it just shouldn't be supported. I understand that we've hit a time in our culture where people like to binge watch things. I understand that's a thing. But you can also binge watch stuff that's already been out. You know? Like, it's not like when Disney Plus releases a new episode of a show, it's only available to be watched in that week and then they take it off. You can binge the show after it's been out. I just don't think you should be able to binge a show on the first day. I think that this having to sit and wait and drawing out that show longer to get more and more people talking about it, it becoming more and more important in the cultural reality that we live in, becoming more and more important socially, is only better for the creators that make the show, the viewers that watch the show, and the overall industry of both television and art in general. And I hope just from viewing this, you are able to see my point. If you disagree and you think that the binge season is better, and I'm not saying you think it's better just because you like binging. If you give me a legitimate reason why the binge like method is better, put it in the comments. And maybe if it's a good enough point, maybe I'll discuss it in a future episode of the Writer's Block. But you can also go down in the comments and let me know something else you want me to talk about, as well as liking and subscribing to the channel. Just baseline support. I'd really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of the Writer's Block. I will see you guys either in the next episode of this series or in another video on this channel soon, hopefully. Bye now.